Kia ora everyone. Welcome to this special edition of Creative Waikato Live called Jeremy Mayall, Toku Ingoa, Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight on this live stream, and I want to start by acknowledging this marvellous panel who have given their time to be here tonight. We're talking a little bit about arts and lockdown, what people have been up to and what people have been listening to and enjoying. And this format is connected to what Creative New Zealand has been doing with their Thankful for Art campaign. That platform has seen New Zealand coming together to celebrate the value the arts have been bringing to people during the lockdown and sharing ways that New Zealanders can engage with and support and participate in the arts. And they ask us to imagine lockdown with no books, film, no music, no dance, no images, and how horrific that would be. Art is important for our well-being, and by engaging in the arts we can keep connected, we can find inspiration, we can find support, we can stay active, all ways that look after our mental health and well-being. The other place this evening's discussion takes some inspiration from is the Unesco Resiliart format. And so for them, Resiliart sheds light on the current state of creative industries amidst crisis through an exclusive global discussion with key industry professionals. Together it raises awareness about the far-reaching ramification of COVID-19 across the sector and aims to support artists and to discuss the value of the arts around this crisis. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how people need culture, how culture makes us resilient and it gives us hope and it reminds us that we're not alone. So how tonight's going to work is that each person will be introduced and they're going to have a little bit of time to talk about what has been going on for them for the past few weeks, what the transition was like, what impact that transition has had on their work and on their art practice and on the way that they enjoy the arts, and what, if anything, they've done creatively throughout this time. This may be sharing some of the favourite art things they've experienced, and then there's going to be some time for the panellists to respond to each other, and there's also going to be time for some questions. So if you have any questions at home, please put them in the comments, and we'll address them whenever we can. As I said, this is a remarkable and diverse panel that we have here from this evening. They're here from a broad range of art forms and a broad range of backgrounds and experiences. So first up, we're going to hear from Regan Balzer. Now, Regan Balzer is a Māori artist and a co-director of a contemporary Māori arts company. She's a painter and a passionate arts champion. So Regan, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. It's quite an interesting thing when creatives are stuck at home in a so-called bubble. Actually, that's quite a little potion for some amazing things to start happening. So even though, you know, we haven't been able to venture out, myself, but also a lot of my artist friends have had all these kind of amazing things been popping, and I've just kind of seen recently a whole lot of these ideas starting to manifest, which has actually been really exciting. I know that when we were going into lockdown, you know, it was quite Cian, we had a little kōrero earlier and she talked about it being apocalyptic, and it was kind of like that. It was like, far is the world going to end, you know, what's happening? So it was kind of like this lull and uncertainty, and really I couldn't think about anything, and I was constantly online, seeing the updates from around the world, watching this COVID develop. But as things went on, you know, you kind of start to readjust and realign, and yeah, I think it's been a really interesting time for all of us. And not all bad. So today I'm wearing a little bit of makeup. I don't usually wear makeup, and that's because spending all this time at home with my kids, they've taught me a few little tricks. Paint your face, you know, love yourself, do some, oh yeah, one thing we've been doing is we were connecting up via Zoom every morning with other families and doing exercises together. So, you know, just making those new connections and keeping well body, mind, spirit, and actually having the time to consider what is the most important thing. Yeah, so it's been really beautiful, and I don't want to take up too much time to start with. So how far do you want me to talk, Jeremy? Because maybe we should pass it on.
Sure. Yeah, we can pass it on, and we'll see how the discussion develops. Thank you.
Cool. And just a little bit. So my iwi, I'm from Te Arawa, Ngāti Ranginui and Tauranga Moana, and I also whakapapa to Ngāti Maniapoto here in Tawanatu. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Regan Balzer.
Awesome. Next up to speak, we have Nancy Caiger. Nancy is the chairperson of Mesh. Oh, sorry, I can't even speak. Mesh Sculpture. She's also a member of the Hamilton Arts Trust and a long-time Waikato arts advocate. Someone who isn't afraid to get up on stage in front of our politicians and tell them how it is and how it should be. So I'm really looking forward to hear from Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you everybody for tuning in. It's so strange to be speaking to people and not being able to see the audience and to interact with them and to get the mood of the place. And I guess when we went into lockdown, that was my biggest issue. I'm used to working from home, so the aloneness factor was not an issue, but the ability to interact with people, that was a big negative. And going in the first week, my panic was like, what about the arts? What will I get to see? I can't go to the show. I can't go to the cinema. I can't go to exhibitions. What am I going to do for my well-being, So I am so grateful for all the different art institutions worldwide, actually, not just in New Zealand, who have made their content available for us. And I've been able to partake of music and ballet and dance and theatre and everything, all from the comfort of my lounge. So so it's that's been a good what's the right word? That's really fed the soul and helped get through this period. Yeah. So I'll pass it on now.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up, we have Cyan Gardner. Now, Cyan is an actor, writer. She was one of the finalists in the Creative Waikato New Works Incubator Project, and she was the 2019 Te Waka Toi Award winner from Creative New Zealand. So, Cyan, welcome.
Hey, it is very strange to talk to. You have no idea who's out there. So Jeremy basically rounded it up of who I am. I was doing my my show, Sorry for Your Loss. We were doing our Wellington season at Circa Theatre the week before lockdown. We were in the last week of the New Zealand Fringe Festival, and I think we flew in, and the caps of the amounts of people and venues started. So it was a really weird time. That was kind of my transition into the lockdown, was trying to see how long we could, last down there. We had worked really hard to get there and to prepare ourselves, and we all travelled down with the family, and the kids were, in the hotel, and every day we were waiting to see if we would go on stage or not. So my transition that week, the week before we went into lockdown, was very much consuming all the information from around the world and trying to just take it day by day in terms of our tiny show. And within, Wellington, we were seeing big shows having to cancel, and people not even being able to open, because their capacities were dropped, or it was just safer to. And we were really fortunate that we had a small capacity, and we were able to space people out and follow procedures, but it was so unknown. And every night I would walk out on stage and expect maybe one person. I knew my mum was in town, so I thought, I've got one. But people would come, and you could see that there was fear, and it felt a bit apocalyptic, but there was also this panic from audiences of, not knowing when the next time they could go to a theatre would be. And so you saw people, you know, there, even though everyone was so worried and about the unknown, there was that still excitement of taking in as much art until, you know, we went into lockdown, which ended up being 2 days after we got home. So yeah, that was my transition in. And are we talking about, does that cover the question? I can't remember it now.
Yeah, you can talk about anything that you want. That's great.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing more of the story will come out as the questions go on, but that gives a little bit of insight into transition into the lockdown.
Awesome, thank you. Next up to speak, we have Michael Moore. Now, Michael Moore is a creative developer at Creative Waikato, but more than that, he's a spoken word poet. He organises poetry slams. He does work with rangatahi around the region, and he is a passionate wordsmith. So I look forward to hearing what he has to share this evening.
Oh, what a setup, guy! Hey, I can't go past. You know, when lockdown meant one thing for me from the get-go, and that was time away from my children. That I wouldn't be able to see my daughters for, you know, an amount of time that we just didn't know what that was going to look like. 4 weeks at most. And I suppose going into lockdown, I felt frustrated and mad and sad. Yeah, frustrated, mad, and sad. That's probably the range of it. There wasn't much. I mean, I'm very lucky, and I'm not saying this because you're my CEO at Creative Waikato, Jeremy, but I'm very lucky that I have my work. Ooh, I think I may have. Am I still there, guys?
Yep, you are.
Frozen a bit on my one, but I'm lucky. I'll carry on talking, and you just let me know. Oh, and I've zoomed in extra close to my face. That's so weird. But I'm very lucky that I have my job. I was very lucky that I had my work to keep coming back to, and to allow me to create kind of new pathways for other artists and other people, and just kind of sit in that lane of service, which is something, you know, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but when you've got kind of mental health things going on, it's just something that, you know, sitting in that service lane is something that's really helpful for me as a person. So to be able to do that and to be able to still continue to help artists and arts organizations do their thing was magic. So I was very lucky to have my job. But kind of going back to my daughters, you know, yeah. So lockdown meant being away from my daughters. So in terms of kind of the arts and the discussion that will kind of fold into about the value of the arts, I leaned very, very heavily into writing and poetry and wordsmithing and words and yeah, and speaking and storytelling and sharing. And I and again, Jeremy, I reached out to you and I said, how do I record my voice really well? And you gave me some great ideas to download GarageBand, and now I feel like I'm the master of GarageBand and iMovie, and I've made some very crack up movies that I'm quite proud of, and just all these epic odes to my children, of just kind of videos and photos of my daughters and stories to piece them together on social media. And it's been fun to really explore words in different ways. So I've been posting kind of little bits and little kind of haiku and things like that, and then full-on poems, and then speaking and videoing myself, and all of that kind of culmination and storm of just being able to use words really helped me to kind of get through those first 2 weeks where I was just aching to see my children. And then by kind of week 3, I was able to kind of comprehend what lockdown might start to, or at least what it felt like to me, and kind of get used to some of that longing, definitely not going to the supermarkets, and then, you know, and then the quiet of lockdown set in, and that was actually a really beautiful thing. And I would go out for walks in the morning. The weather was still gorgeous. And it's weird now being in level 2 because I miss the quiet. I miss the silence. I miss the kind of clarity of the elements, you know, just the sun seemed to be beaming through extra bright, you know, like without the smog. I could hear a car coming from a mile away. In fact, I could smell a car coming from a mile away, you know. It was just all these different things that were happening in nature and the environment, and all of that really helped me to kind of settle for that one thing that I was missing most, which was my kids. So yeah, I'll shut it down there for a bit and do a spiral pass to my left.
Awesome.
And come back later.
Thanks. Our final speaker to introduce tonight is Mr. David Sidwell. David is a musical theatre director, a composer, an educator, a holder of the key to the city. What more can be said about the maestro? And again, it's going to be really fascinating to hear what he's been up to. I know some of it has included writing songs for an original musical, and I'm sure that there are other things going on as well. So, David, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jeremy. Kia ora, everybody. And yeah, I feel very humbled to be sitting here amongst the fellow presenters. It's actually a really nice opportunity to talk to people, but it is quite odd to. I mean, I'm used to sitting in Zoom meetings with my staff and colleagues, but to actually be talking out there to the world as such and not having any response or feedback is quite odd. But I know you're out there, so thanks for listening. I suppose going into lockdown was quite odd for me because I'm busy at Wintec during the day and then directing theatre at night or composing, and it sort of came upon us. I think New Zealand, it was sort of unexpected. I think we'd heard about it, COVID-19, or I don't know. I think we might have called it the virus back then, that was affecting the rest of the world, but not us, which is a bit of a New Zealand thing. So and then all of a sudden it came upon us, and I was 3 weeks away from opening Chitty Chitty Bang Bang for St. Peter's. And, you could sense that people were becoming a little afraid, as the news was coming from around the world. And, there was sort of murmurs here in New Zealand that it could be going to affect us. And then all of a sudden it did. And then we went into lockdown and rehearsals ceased. There was sort of sadness amongst the students because, of course, Year 13 students don't get to do the show anymore. It'll be postponed to next year. Some people, they'll miss out, and others will get the roles that they were in and were treasuring. So that was sort of kind of odd. We had auditioned Chicago for Hamilton Operatic, and that was about to go into music rehearsals and dance rehearsals, and that all came to a stop. Wintec shut its campus, and everything within a week went online. And it was, to use one of Jeremy's phrases, it was madness. And and so for me, it just closed down, shut down, and there was this artistic or creative void for me. Yes, Wintec work carried on during the day, and that was really busy, but there's always my escape to theatre or to music, and that wasn't there. And I think because of the uncertain times, because it hit us so quickly, I think there was initially that, as I say, that void. And so to be creative, I found quite difficult. And I used to, when I was breaking in between Zoom meetings, I would just go and cut the hedge or pull out some weeds in the garden because I just couldn't be inspired to write anything. And then Jeremy had a Zoom meeting with a couple of us that are writing this original piece of musical theatre and said, right, well, things shouldn't stop and we should just carry on. And so he sort of put this timeline in front of us, and so I had to get creative. And which was good, and it sort of took me from the garden and from my hedges, and threw me behind a piano, and away we went, and and then I suppose if there was a sort of silver lining, I've been trying to do my PhD, and it was just sort of becoming too much to try and get everything done. Well, because everything stopped, I've been able to immerse myself in my PhD too, much to my supervisor's pleasure. And so it's sort of a happening thing. So hopefully the rest of this year, minus theatre, who knows, I'll be able to break the back of the PhD. So he is hoping. So that's sort of that's where I'm coming from, or that's where I am presently.
Great. I just wanted to have a chance to open the floor for anyone who wanted to respond to anyone else's initial statements there. Otherwise, I'll just roll on with some questions.
Let's roll on.
Just in regards to Cian, when you were talking about this before lockdown, and you were going through those last performances. And I attended a performance in Auckland, actually, and it was a couple days just before the lockdown. And maybe a third of the crowd didn't turn up. But the ones who did turn up, they got an amazing experience. And it's an experience that will only ever be experienced that time. So actually I felt, even though it was kind of scary, just being able to be there and everybody knowing that it's, being on that same vibe, knowing it's dangerous, we're scared, but we're here, honouring this beautiful performance. It was so amazing. Yeah, I can just imagine how your performances were, those last ones. The last one, how was that for you?
It was quite exhilarating because we were really expecting no one to come, and that was our busiest night, was the last night. And I think we were, I don't know, I don't know if this is right, but I think we were one of the last shows in Wellington, and there was this, it felt like, as Michael was saying, an active service, both ways. I felt like I was serving, you guys want to rock up here and you want to risk it and you want to sit for an hour with me where I'm going to talk to you face to face, and I will get quite close if you're in the front row. I will serve you and I will tell you the story and I will make sure it is a good night for you, because it's going to be our last night. And in saying that, they gave that right back. They were there and you could see empty. It's a very strange thing to perform to a theatre with a lot of empty seats. It's like, the audience members are circled by emptiness. And it's hard to get your bearings, but they were there and they were so present and they were just giving, so much appreciation to be able to experience theatre for the last time, for, however long it would be. So it was actually really positive. And in the foyer, they didn't want to leave. That togetherness that theatre creates, they wanted to hold on to it. And so I kind of just walked out and then we parted our ways, and it was really nice.
It's interesting hearing your experience, because I think about, you're talking about the last time before lockdown, and so what will be our theatre experience the first time that we can go into, and the theatre will not be the same, because we have the seats, we can't sit next to somebody. When we enter the foyer, we have to keep this 2-meter distancing, and there is still a fear factor out there. So I think that will be intense. I am actually looking forward to my first theatre performance. Whoever wants to put a show on, I'll be there, boots and all. So I think it will be an intense and emotional time for us to come back and see familiar faces and enjoy that in the moment thing, which you don't have when you are watching a pre-recorded show that is screened through your computer or your television. It's just not the same as live theatre. Yeah.
Even a live stream format isn't the same. That kind of sense of energy, it fulfills a different need. I mean, it fulfills a need certainly, but it's differently fulfilling than being in a room together with people, feeling that energy, whatever that energy may be, and responding to that as a performer and as an audience member and as a kind of everything in between. I think there's something so beautiful and ephemeral about live arts experiences that there's nothing else that can come close to that.
It's a shared experience, eh?
Yeah.
It's you all have agreed to sit down at the exact same time and listen or tell a story, basically. And that's one thing that we can't do, you know. So I am excited as well to go to my first theatre show, whether I'm in it or an audience member, because you realise everyone's made that conscious decision to be there in that moment of time that'll be so specific to those that are there. I think, and you know, after all this time apart, we're so hungry for that shared experience where we can, you know, the lights go down for the first show and the first intake of the breath, you know, from the audience, and then when the lights go down and you, that's going to be the magic that I think brings people back, because you can't get it. You can't, you know,
You can't get it.
film is its own beauty and stuff, but there's something about live that.
Totally, we're gonna be tired of this digital experience and long for the analog.
Yeah, it's very two-dimensional, whereas, you know, it's multi-dimensional when you're actually present, smelling and feeling and all of those aspects, hearing, all the senses.
And I've sat in the live of your show, Cian, before, with a full audience. I can only imagine how special it must have been to be in a smaller, more intimate audience while you're completely in the service lane of performing. Would have been epic.
David, you're gonna.
Yeah, I was just sort of picking up on, you know, everybody's comments there. Really, the first time that we all can actually go to the theatre and experience live theatre, because of the different emotions that everybody will have. I mean, there's that added experience. Yes, we all love theatre, and whether it's the overture and the orchestra striking up, or we're at the bar meeting somebody beforehand. But this time there's that added fear or distance or added dimension that will sort of increase or intensify the emotion, and which to me I think will be fascinating and an experience that I don't think we've ever experienced before.
Because I think also the way that creatives will respond to this in the different audience sizes or the different limitations, and the way that that will be reflected in the work that we create and produce is going to have an impact on the way that we engage with it as well. And there could be some really interesting outcomes in the short term where there are performances designed for only 10 people in the audience. And what does that mean if you change like the model where it's used to be 100 people or 200 or 300 people in an audience to a thing that's designed for there to only be 10 tickets sold? What does that mean for that experience where it's really exclusive and it's really unique? And if we think about art as a kind of way of processing emotions, when the emotions are heightened and are in this more advanced kind of state, the experience is going to be in an echo of that.
And it may be that people start, you know, I was just thinking before when Nancy was talking that, you know, I've got a song cycle that's sort of sitting there that was going to be performed, and that's gone on the back burner because, of course, nobody can go out. But, of course, you know, perhaps it can happen in a drawing room. Perhaps it can happen to 5 people. It just has to happen more often so that more people get to experience it.
Well, that's a great thing. It's pushing us out of our comfort zones and out of our boundaries and what we, you know, usually see as normal, and forcing us to be creative and do new things. One of the things I was involved in while in lockdown was I was able to finish this artwork behind me titled Emergence. I had started it previously, but I actually felt that it fit for the time, because it's about somebody who's stuck, you know, and wanting to get out of this position or place, but not being able to, and being still bound because of their duty to their family and to keep their family safe and well. And this piece became a part of a national-wide exhibition. So it's a digital show, and the paintings rotate. It's called Isolation. And the paintings rotate on bus shelters and big signs, digital signs around New Zealand. So there were kind of those things that happen, you know, natural progression to new ways of showing work, and also being able to show work that was being created, very timely work that was showing what was happening for different people. So yeah, that was really cool.
It's the Auckland Art Fair. I don't know how many of you tuned in, but initially they cancelled it, and then they said they'll postpone it for later in the year, but they decided to go ahead with the show because all the artists have already created a body of works for the show. And so we had a virtual art fair, and it was just absolutely amazing to be able to see artwork and to see so much sales going through as well. You know, it's so encouraging, because you think, oh, some people say, how can you buy a piece of work when you've only seen a picture of it? So it's very encouraging for me to see that virtual fair being so successful. And I know we've got one gallery here in Hamilton that this is the second year that they've taken part in the art fair. So they were quite, you know, really looking forward to the fair. And then it just fell by the wayside. And during the virtual show, they had amazing success, because they've had, you know, they featured two artists, and one of the artists' work was complete sold out. So there is, as you say, Regan, it's about finding new ways and preparing ourselves for the future. You know, if we have to go into level 4 again, touch wood we don't, what do we do, and how do artists sustain themselves? Because, you know, visual artists need to sell their works, performing artists needs to be out there in the theatre to earn a living, and much as we all feel a little bit digitalized out, it is an avenue, and we kind of like need to see how we harness it for the future, and maybe run sort of like parallel universe, you know, having things which are in the real world, the IRL, and things which are in the digital world, and maybe having shows which are run simultaneously like that. I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking about how, you know, I can, when artists don't work for an employer, so they cannot go and get the wage subsidy or whatever, how do they sustain themselves if they can't sell their work, or if they can't perform? Yeah, something serious thoughts need to be given to.
I think it has revealed some interesting things about the state of the arts and cultural sector, in terms of how that we all know that the way that we experience work is so vital, but there is also scope, as you say, for kind of diversifying into that alternate universe of online, and how that can serve to support the real world experience and diversify the real world experience. I wonder if there's been any interesting realizations from anyone around what this situation has revealed about the state of your art form locally or nationally or internationally.
I'm not a practicing artist, so this is something for the practitioners here. I'm a consumer, so.
personally, I think we're really lucky actually to have such access to technology nowadays. If this had happened to us 10, 20, 30 years ago, it would have been quite a different story. But right now, there's amazing projects that are on the go. Creative New Zealand have pumped a whole lot of funding into supporting artists and new projects, especially on digital forums, which has been really awesome. So there's a whole lot of new things that are happening. And even though a lot of those are going onto a digital format, they're also kind of like a phase one, which can lead into face-to-face contact. So it's pretty cool. Jeremy, myself, Mike, and Horomuna, we are looking at working. Is it all right to talk about it, Jeremy?
Yeah. Why not?
Matariki, last year we did a performance, and Mike did his amazing spoken word, Jeremy his amazing music and beats, and Horomuna with his taonga puro, and I was painting live a 5-meter painting. And the people that were there, they got to experience that and nobody else. And it was beautiful. It was such a beautiful night. But this year, it's quite hard to have that same intimate one-to-one experience. So we're looking at other avenues, and Jeremy's the master on online and getting all these performances out. So that will be the new realm where we're able to now share that experience with so many more people who can't come to Hamilton, who can't come to the Meteor and view it. So in that, those opportunities have actually opened a whole lot of doorways. So yeah, really excited.
It's interesting how I think because we've been forced into it, the openness towards a digital offering it seems more available now than it probably did 3 months ago.
They're more acceptable too, I think.
I think, yeah, you're right. People are more accepting of it. But then the key question is, how do we make a digital offering pay? Because you can't keep on doing it for free. I mean, I feel so guilty enjoying such amazing things and not having to pay a cent. So I've been making donations to the various institutions as a form of payment. But we, going forward, I think if we do have digitalized shows, whether it be visual or performing arts, we need to think of a way in which we, the audience, the consumer, can contribute by putting something into the show. And I don't know how that's done, whether it will put people off because they're so used to having all the freebies. But we certainly need to give that some thought. Yeah.
Well, I also think that there's nothing else like the face-to-face experience.
Yeah.
So this may be broadening the scope so people are more aware of what's happening, but then when we're able to come together, then they really get the full experience, which is like no other.
Yeah, just almost a gateway platform, eh? I think one of the awesome things that have kind of fallen out of this is the masterfulness of young people when it comes to the digital realm. And there's probably, if there's a young person watching right now, they're probably like, "Gah, the terminology is whack." You're talking about digital this, digital that, and I feel really proud to say that because it makes me feel a little bit cool. but and I've been fortunate enough to kind of do a little bit of work with our local youth services just recently, and that's really come to the forefront. How brilliant young people are online and the kind of leadership that they can offer in terms of how we use that space. So yeah, that's been one thing that's been ticking away. I come from a background in youth working, so that's something I've kind of always known, but it's great to kind of see it starting to kind of rise to the surface, and seeing councils and stuff, regional council, city council, really look at getting a great blueprint of what young people are doing in the region, and bringing their voices to some of those decision-making tables. Because yeah, I do think the digital platform is so very, very necessary, and it is going to be like 50-50, I think. there's going to be this hybrid living.
I think something I've noticed about just in my experience, theatre, you know, when the lockdown happened, you got cut off at the knees. So mine's not so much the end product. I've been able to see digital stuff, but I haven't produced it. I just know that's not my specialty. But the process of creating has been able to crack open a bit. You know, I've been fortunate to work with people who are in England, you know, who are in the UK and coming in at midnight, you know, and I'm logging on at 9 a.m. And it's starting to we're starting to see the ability to have that you know, relationship building between artists and creating the creative process, not just being necessarily in a room with your set amount of people and you know, bouncing ideas off the four walls. You're starting to really drag in people from all walks of life that can only strengthen your process or whatever product you're working towards. I was really fortunate to be able to work with the University of Waikato and be able to view a lecture from John Britton in the UK, who I read about for years when I was studying, you know, and to be able to we'll be able to work with him in one of the projects that I'll be involved in. It breaks down those barriers of someone that I, you know, looked up to and referred to in my essays because I was a bit obsessed. And now he can sit in the corner on the laptop while I'm, you know, rehearsing, and I'm able to go, hey, mate, what do you think? I wouldn't do that, you know. I probably bow down out of the shot, but you know, that international relationship and rethinking, that's for me has been not necessarily rethinking how can I produce the end product, but how can I adapt my creative process to still create that collaborative environment and to bounce ideas off people, but people that are outside of my community. You know, it's beautiful to work with people in your hub, but there's something really powerful when you bring someone completely out to reflect on what you're creating. So that's something that I've been able to see, and I think I'm guessing can be related to different art forms.
Sure, yeah.
So I think, you know, the COVID has, you know, it just puts us all on the same level. It doesn't choose who it's going to. Well, it does, but you know, we're all one and the same, whether we're painters, sculptors, composers, or whether we're millionaires or whether we've got no money. You know, so I think it's just quite. You know, we can sit back and think, well, you know, what can we do? How can we do it? And just feel pretty humble about where we actually are at. I think you know, the Mum's Kitchen that we're busy writing, where that was going to finish, we and Jeremy prodded us and said, no, we can make this work. And as Cian says, you know, we actually had a reading of the draft work with one of our actors from out of Texas, and you know, another one was in Cambridge, and a couple of us here. But meantime, we'd already pre-recorded some of the draft compositions, so we could actually hear rather than you know, just say putting it off. We came up with initiatives where we could actually make it happen, and I think that's something that we wouldn't have bothered doing before. And I think we would have just put it off till next year or till whenever we thought we were safe to get on and do it. But I do pick up on what Nancy was saying before. You know, digital's all very well, and we get these wonderful things coming to us internationally, but how do we pay these artists for it? Because they can only go so far, and then they won't have their own bubble to be in because they won't be able to pay their rent. So, you know, you've got to be able to exist, and particularly when, you know, the theatres In Britain, they're not talking about opening them up till next year. So, you know, there are these artists that are out there trying to earn a living.
Definitely. There's been a couple of...
Sorry,
You go.
Oh, I've seen, and I haven't quite looked into it myself, but I've seen that platform Patreon kind of jump up for artists.
What's that platform again?
Patreon?
It's a digital patronage model. So drawing from the way that Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci were funded from their patrons, but making it into micro payments, so you can set up a platform online, and it's sort of like a social media thing, but you have an engagement with your audience, and they agree to pay $2 a week or $10 a month or whatever, and then they get advance access to the content that you make, or behind the scenes videos, or other kind of things. And it's this way that we as audience can be patrons to the creatives, to kind of support their work, but in these, like the price of a coffee or something like that. And it becomes this kind of ongoing subscription, essentially, to support the artists whose work you're interested in and believe in. And it's a really great platform, and it's been slowly kind of growing in its work, and well worth artists kind of thinking about in terms of another way to, again, diversify the work that they're doing.
Interesting.
We've had a couple of kind of little questions and comments here. One is anyone looking to do intimate performances catering to 100 people or similar, to what Turning Fork are in Hamilton? That's from Mike Gilling, so I guess if you're interested in that, you can reach out to him. And then another question here is around, what are your thoughts on the plethora of free work being consumed online? Do you think it will stifle audience attendance at live events at all in the future?
We kind of like have touched on that a little bit, haven't we? And I guess it's a case of how long those things will continue before they start to pull. Because as the different countries go back to a semblance of normality, those shows will start to disappear as well. And so we just need to ease ourselves back on. My fear is several folds. One is that as people's pockets are hit by the lockdown, they will have less disposable dollar. And so there will be this competition as such for the for the leisure dollar, and that becomes a hard situation for theaters and or visual arts and so on. And then the other problem, of course, is that if the digital content carries on and people get so used to it not paying, then how do we get them back to paying? How do we inject back that excitement that we talked about earlier? You know, that shared experience of being in the room and feeling the pulse, and you know, wanting to express the emotion that you feel from what the performers have given to you. Because, you know, I get so excited sometimes when I watch something and there's no one to share it with, and I'm jumping up and down. The only thing I can do is to go on social media and say to people, hey, look, you got to see this show because it's so good. And it's just not the same, is it? You know? So, yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough transition. It's something that we need to manage carefully if theaters and organizations like, you know, Hamilton Operatic and so on is to continue. We need to manage this process and get people back to wanting to pay for what they are enjoying. If we don't, then we can kiss everything goodbye, and I don't want to see that happening.
Well, if we think about musicians, for example, it's been a discussion that's been happening for a long time, way before COVID and the lockdowns, is this diaspora of free music that's out there and people having ready access. And so the whole music scene has actually changed and flipped on its head. You don't have CD stores anymore. People, are accessing music in different ways, but it's changed, but it's still surviving. And live music is a lot of musicians have said that's the creme de la creme, is the live music, but also having those other forums where people, because the thing with arts is it's not something you just look at and enjoy. It's something that moves you emotionally, that you connect to. So often people don't want to have that experience just once, they want to recreate it or have it in their life. So that's when the buy-in becomes more of a desire. So those are the sort of, that's how we can access, that's what I believe is how we can access that ongoing support from people. And I like Patreon and those types of things because it's not a huge amount of money they have to pay. I remember when I was young and I had to I wanted to get a CD, 3 foot high, and I saved up all my pennies for like a month to get one CD, and I played that to death. But now, you can choose. I love that song. Pay $2. It's affordable, but you're supporting the artist, and all those $2 from all those different people. It's really supporting the artist. So it may not be about getting that big money straight away, but it's that ongoing support and having that understanding that it's in paying that little bit, you're actually supporting the artist to continue doing what you love, to continue to nurture people's souls and make the world a better place. So I think even in that perspective, I think our younger ones have got it, they understand that more than us older ones who are used to the old way of being. That it's the younger ones understand that kind of ebb and flow, and that give a little, and it's actually quite big in the bigger scheme of things, because they're used to being in a global world through the internet.
Great. So I guess one of the questions to kind of the big questions to talk about is, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but why do we need to care about the culture sector in general? Why do we need to care about it in a pandemic? What is it about the arts and culture that is so valuable to you? And maybe if we start with David.
Well, I suppose for Michael touched on it before. It's for our own mental health. I think it's for everybody's mental health. I think it's for our well-being, and I think perhaps that people don't even think about it when they go to theatre or they listen to music or they look at art. They do feel better. They might not know at that present point in time that it makes them feel better, but it does. And from a personal point of view, no matter what I'm looking at in the arts, it's inspirational to me, and so it allows me to be more creative and hope, not only inspire me but inspire others. So I think that's what is really special about it.
Awesome. And Michael.
Yeah, I think, I kind of refer to an indigenous lens, but I think when I look at it that way, both are just one and the same. Art and culture, they're both places where those, and I refer to story probably because I write, but I mean we hold stories, like in Te Māori, we hold stories in creativity in every aspect of our living. And I recently travelled to Uluru and experienced a very similar thing where they look at their lineage and whakapapa through song lines and storylines, and they use those song lines and storylines to map geography and, you know, particular spaces where they've lived hold a particular song and particular stories, and then I was lucky enough to travel to Canada and hear a very similar conversation where, you know, like this idea that songs hold rocks and everything has a story and they all produce this luminosity of light, you know. And I think art is our attempt to articulate that magic, you know. That's how we attempt to articulate this, the infinite luminosity and light and story and magic that exists in all things. And we're so very lucky as artists to be able to tap into a way of expressing that allows us to even just cover an inch of being able to articulate those things. And so, yeah, when I do the overlay of the Indigenous lens, I believe those two things are just one and the same.
Awesome. And Regan?
Oh, there's a lot going through my head. Just when David was talking, you know, about art being something enjoyable. Can also, what art for me is, makes me feel alive because it takes me through different emotions. Sometimes you get frustrated and angry that someone did that. And it makes you question, wow, why am I fighting with that artwork? And other times it's like, oh my gosh, I need that, you know, that's just brightened up my day. Wonderful. Yeah, so for me, art, it you know, takes us to places that we may not necessarily go to in our everyday life. So it's really special in that way. And in terms of storytelling and sharing our stories, because our stories are important. And if we as artists, who are representing the people and communities that we represent, if we're not sharing the stories, then no one's going to hear them, or someone else is going to write our stories for us from their perspective. So, yeah, really important.
Awesome. And Cian?
I think you know, over lockdown we were consuming so much to fill in the silence. Well, for me anyways, you know, I had PJ Masks on the corner for my toddler while I'm trying to, you know, listening to music or a podcast or something. And so I think that it's really hard to articulate the value of art because, you know, we're all saying it. It's this transfer of energy or this feeling, or it provokes something from us, whether it's emotion or an argument, or, you know, but it's really hard to put a value system on that. And the only thing that I can think as I was listening and nodding and going, yes, that's, you know, we're all consuming it, you know, whether we know it or not, is we don't go through the day without consuming art. And it may not be as obvious, you know, you may not take a trip to the gallery or walk through into a theatre or go to a live music festival, but you're consuming it. And so the way that I look at it, and I'm trying to think of how within the context of, you know, New Zealand and our community as a whole, I think of, you know, keep it local or support local. You know, you got people in your backyard that are trying to tell stories and are working on their art form to share their perspective of the world. And for me, when I'm taking an art, you know, it's about human connection. It's about one person saying, this is my perspective on this thing, and you going, whoa, really? Me too, or nah, not at all. And so it's that conversation, and it's that connection point that we have within the arts that we can't have, you know, when we're not creative and we're not breaking down those barriers and being really raw in whatever format it is. That's what I think where the value is held is in that connection point, and it's you can't put a dollar sign or a bar graph on it. You know, it's that feeling and emotion that we're all saying. but you can't articulate it. So I think it's understanding that people in your neighborhood are doing it, and if they're there offering their art, to be there and to support local, and to, you know, look within your region at what's on offer, because that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to start a conversation. So yeah, if you value it, then show up for the conversation. Yeah.
Awesome. And Nancy.
Ooh. My panelists have summed up so well what art is all about. I don't know, was it Picasso who said that art is more important than life? And to some extent, it is with us. And I agree with you, Cian. We consume it all the time, whether we know it or not. And, you know, we consume it from all ages as well. You know, as a child, the drawings, how many proud parents have not framed up an artwork of their kindy kids drawing or whatever, right? So we are already consuming on that stage, and right through this lockdown, when I've seen people expressing how they feel about lockdown through songs, through poetry, through rap, to whatever, and you know, even like when the nurses wanted to say thank you to people, what do? They did it in song, or it's always done in that way. It's not like standing up there and making a speech. It's just different. We need to express ourselves creatively in whatever form we're comfortable with. And so I think if there's one thing we've learned through this period, is how important art is to everyone, and even to the most non-art person, somebody who in pre-lockdown time would say, oh, they don't know anything about art. I think even they will probably have to realize now that it has played a great part in sustaining them to that. So I think we want to build on that. I think that's so important, and the connection. And it's such a perverse situation that as our borders get closed up and we can't travel to meet with each other, you are actually connecting with other artists in other parts of the world, because we've got the technology, and we are very grateful that we are in this happening now and not when we didn't have the internet or whatever. Yeah. So so we have lots of lessons to take on from this this situation. Yeah.
One question that we have here, which kind of builds on to what we've just been talking about, and it starts by saying thank you so much for doing this, for being part of this panel. What argument do you have to respond to those who don't believe that the arts in a climate like this are necessary enough to receive funding or mainstream support, given so many are needing help? And how can you present this time as an opportunity for artists? And I'm going to start with you, Nancy, having been at some previous talks of yours. I'm sure that you have a brilliant response.
What was it that I said at that talk?
It's about the people who were complaining about rates, I think.
Yeah, you know, I get it all the time. Like with Mesh, every time we put an artwork out there, people say, waste of taxpayers' money. Waste of ratepayers' money. Hello? We've raised every blooming cent to build this work to give to you. We haven't taken your money. But then when you think about it, why shouldn't the ratepayers or the taxpayers contribute? Because they've benefited from it. It's been good for their soul. So we need to stop. Oh, shall I talk about that whether... Do you guys remember the advert? The guy who goes around and he pops into your room and he says, "Stop the weather chatter." He's selling air conditioning, right? But people start to say, "Oh, it's too cold. Oh, it's too hot," and he's going like, "Stop the chatter, stop the weather chatter, stop the weather chatter." So for me, it's like telling people out there, stop the waste the ratepayers' money chatter, because it is not a waste of ratepayers' money. It's not a waste of taxpayers' money. It is good for us individually and collectively, And we need to say to our council, why aren't you giving more money to the arts? We should be saying to the Minister of Arts, who is also our Prime Minister, where is the money for arts? You know, we're supporting $72 million for blooming race horses. I don't want to go here because, you know, my politics will come out and then this will take on into a different sphere again. But it is not a waste of money to spend on the arts. Whether you are an individual consumer, whether you are a granting body, whether you are a business thinking about sponsorship, whether you are a local council, whether you are central government, art is important, it is necessary, so please fund the arts.
Does anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I suppose just on a personal level, I was really lucky this year to support the Boone Street Art Festival with a bit of poetry. And as I travelled around kind of getting ideas from all the different pieces in the city, I can't say that I didn't walk away from that little journey of going around to see all those pieces of art without being changed. You know, it had a real effect on me, and it actually threw me back to a memory when I was a kid. And I always loved visual art, and I used to think I could draw as a kid. But often, you know, I'd be on my way to footy training, and that, you know, the stark kind of lifestyle difference between being a young footy player but also loving art, which is an invisible line that doesn't really exist, everyone, just so you know. And I would always stop if there was a new, you know, street art or even a tag or a bomb or a throw up just on a wall somewhere. I would always stop and just take it in for a moment. And I realized that when I did that again with Boone, just how important it is. And I realized as an artist, you know, how much people are putting inside these pieces of art, the messages that they're trying to give to the world, you know, and the language and stuff that they're embedding into every brushstroke, you know. So because as an artist, you know, you get to a point where the message that you're trying to send out is like of the truest version of yourself. and I, you know, I don't know what it was when I was a young fella, but I kind of recognized that, and I always gave it a moment, whether it was just, you know, one of my homies from the hood that had snuck out at night to bomb on the wall, you know. And I used to think, I used to critically think about it as a young fella, and I did the same thing again, with Boone. And yeah, I mean, like Nancy said, it's good for the soul, whether you know it or not. And I was very lucky enough to kind of just become aware of it again in my older age, and then be able to attach that to something when I was younger. And coming up in a rough neighborhood, those moments, you know, those small moments of reprieve to just appreciate some art was really special.
Yeah, I think for me, we quickly forget, or the governing bodies quickly forget who they call out to when there's a catastrophe. Who do they call out to raise money for? Yeah. Who do they want free artworks to raise money? They want musicians to perform. They want actors to sing, you know, and do it for free. Now it's the other way around, and the actors, you know, the arts are hurting. These artists are hurting, and I think it's time that they do need to be supported. And yes, there are these other little things that are happening, but I really think I agree with Nancy. You know, $72 million for horse racing, for goodness sake. Well, yes, okay, it's gone there. And it's gone to other valuable people in need, but the artists are in need too, and they seem to have been forgotten. I was thinking about that this afternoon. I have yet to see or hear anything from the Prime Minister or Grant Robertson where there is this big bundle of money to support arts and culture.
So the arts and culture response is supposed to come out in the next couple of days.
Are they?
So we wait with bated breath to see what that response is. But certainly that's the the most recent news that I have of that is sometime in the next couple of days.
It's interesting that we've waited so long.
Definitely. And I think that we see that the way that the arts and artists come forward to support humanity in times of crisis. And we see it coming out of Christchurch. We see it with the Australian bushfires. We see it with any kind of humanitarian crisis. And then in this instance, our arts and our artists and our art sector and our community organisations have been so horrifically hit by this, as has everyone. But it's going to take a lot longer for particularly that performing arts to come back. And as what we talked about earlier with the audiences being weary and also the need to kind of grow audience capacity to be able to deliver things at the same level of what we needed. And this brings out discussions around sustainable funding models and what that means for professional artists and what that means for community arts organisations as well. And there's a much bigger conversation going on there. And I think that one of the comments we have here, which says people don't truly understand the economic value of arts activity in New Zealand, and New Zealanders have been poor at telling this story, and so we need to have an economic study to value this and to be able to speak to it at all levels. And I think that that's certainly the case, and that is some of the work that Creative New Zealand has been doing, and some of the work that Creative Waikato is looking into. And there are a lot of things to pick apart in there.
It also reminds me too, when I think back to, some of you won't remember this, to black and white TV. And actually it's funny, my niece asked me one time, she goes, "Oh, what was it like when the world was black and white?" I was so offended. But anyway, those who remember black and white TV, when I used to watch TV when I was young, I loved it. It was amazing, and I didn't even notice that it was in black and white. But once colour came, and Cian, you'll probably see the difference between analog and digital, the improvements in technology, how now the technology we're exposed to, when we go back to black and white TV or older technology, it just seems so for one of the so people who don't have art in their life, what they have, they're happy with. It's quite fine and often quite happy. So why should they want for more? But it's not until they actually have the experience and involvement in the more colourful arts that they actually feel how much more enriched their lives become. So, without us if we don't keep pushing forward and keep making these opportunities for people to have these new experiences, it's going to be a very black and white experience. It's going to be quite mono everything.
Chromatic.
Yeah.
Good point. Good analogy.
There's another comment here that says, artists are great observers and the arts and culture are great mediums to reflect on and question the status quo of our times. We see ourselves through the art we produce. Arts often point at the issues being overlooked. Which I think is interesting. I wonder, I'm aware that we're coming close to the end of the time. I wonder if we can quickly go around. What is one thing in particular that has really, one artwork, one art experience, one thing you've watched, seen, read, looked at that has really resonated with you in the last little while that people might like to go and check out? I'll give you a quick minute to think about it. For me, one of the really great experiences was to be involved in the Transmission Film Project, which brought together 53 creatives from around the world to create 31 short films over the last 5 weeks, and that was such a thrilling experience to be part of, and to see how that kind of brought a community of people together. So that's my one, and they're all on YouTube, and I very much recommend going out and checking them out. So I'm going to go to anti-clockwise on my screen, which means Nancy, you are up.
Okay. Oh, it's so hard to choose. I've seen so many good things. But what I'm absolutely enjoying at the moment is the Auckland Winter Writers Festival, and it's live every Sunday at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's a good thing to do, and they interview 3 different writers and authors, and they are quite a big range, and they could be local and it could be international. So in your living room, you would have somebody perhaps from Canada or somebody locally. And just last week was Becky Manawatu, who won the Auckland Prize. So to be able to have that live conversation, even though they can't see us, we can see them. I think that has been really special. And because reading has been one of my big things this past few months, and I've got this goal to read 202 books for 2020, so I'm halfway there. So to be able to enjoy that, because it was supposed to have been up in Auckland and it would have been cancelled, and I just love the fact that they've brought it live.
Awesome. Cian.
Oh, I freaked out under pressure. For most of the lockdown, I was alone with a 3-year-old, so I watched a whole lot of cartoons and animation. My son also produced some beautiful artwork, as Nancy said. It made it on the fridge. But I think I'm trying to... So a lot of my consuming of, like, art that wasn't Netflix Kids was done in a very short amount of time, but I'd often have music. I have always had music on in the background, but I've started to try and find a lot more I don't know, I guess not mainstream artists, or go back and I've used it as like a time jump, you know. I don't know if you guys do this, or I've got playlists from, you know, childhood, teenage, that date I went on, or you know, uni. So that's the only thing that keeps coming into my head. I've been fortunate to watch some shows online, but often it's kind of 10-minute increments, and then have to pause and cook dinner and then come back and try and watch. So I would say music, which, you know, it's not the eloquent thing that I would want to say, and Paw Patrol doesn't quite cut it either. So I'm sure my fellow panelists will really nail this question. So if you think back to this chat, you know, tomorrow, just remember I said something really ace.
Maybe after the chat you can share a link to one of your playlists in the comments, so we can all have a party like it's your first date.
Oh, welcome, come along.
Michael.
Oh,
jeez. Composure. It's got to be eloquent. I actually do, and this just sticks out a mile, kind of above the rest. And it's I barely want to name drop, but I won't, because he's not even ready for this. But it's a young man who's on my social media he was a kid that I worked with a long time ago, doing a little bit of spoken word with, and he was an incredible young rapper. And I always wondered what had happened to him, and where he went after we kind of parted ways. But he's popped back up on my Facebook just recently, and he's just been killing it, writing these raps and bars, and he's got his daughter sitting on his lap, and he's a young dad now, and that has just been choking me up some nights, just watching where he's taking his life, and what, you know, some of the things that he's writing about, and now he's just putting them out into the world. And we had a little kind of connection online where we kind of touched base, and he just spoke about you know, the time when we were doing spoken word and stuff together, and then he just reminded me of I don't know, I guess so many of the young men that I've worked with before, and then even, you know, of my younger version of myself, and a lot of my mates as well, and then to just see him just come out online and just and put his work out online with that kind of vulnerable courage space where I believe artists sit, has been incredible. And because I can't name drop, I'll say if you go on Facebook and you go to a page called Bars Now, so I'm hyping up Bars Now right now. So if I post something there, hit me with the views. Yeah. So and his stuff is on Bars Now right now. I wish I could name drop, but you'll see him pop up straight away. I mean, he's like a sore thumb. His message is so pure and true and good, and I love that stuff. Yeah. So him, that guy, unnamed. Bars Now, check it out. Bars Now, check it out. And also the Lockdown Entertainment page has been very, very awesome in terms of local talent and people just going for it creatively.
Awesome. Regan.
Well, Cian, we've got 10 people in our house, in our bubble.
Wow.
And a whole lot of young people. So I've learned the joy of TikTok. Can't stop watching it. But when I escape away from the lovely cacophony of people, Trevor Noah, he's a comedian, but he's really clever, and he's giving up daily commentary on what's happening in America. It's quite hilarious. But in terms of back here at home, a couple of weeks ago, a group came over filming a show for Māori TV called Toy Stories. And so they were all masked up. It was quite interesting. And we were all like at a distance and they had their camera. But that'll be one to look out for. I think the series starts this week. And showing artists in their studios working, but offering tips for our youth, our rangatahi, to learn new skills and creating artworks. So I think that's an initiative for our young and up and coming artists.
That's great. David.
Just speaking of TikToks, my daughter came in before and told me, Dad, our TikTok has got 9,500 views.
Oh,
wow. What did you do, David?
I had to dance in this family TikTok that I read.
Oh, nice.
So 9,500 views. I can't even tell you how to look it up.
I'm not into TikTok, so I don't know how to. Anyway,
but no, something for me because I don't listen to music. If I'm preparing for a show, then I'll listen to the soundtrack. And then when I go away from that show and I want time out, I like silence. But I was doing the dishes about 2 weeks ago, and I happened to think, I'll turn on Spotify, and there was a segment of Stephen Sondheim's 90th birthday, which they broadcast to the world because they couldn't do it in the Carnegie Hall or whatever theatre they were going to do it on Broadway. So they actually went into all the performers' homes, into their bubbles, and that to me was just magic because there was no makeup, there were no stage lights, there were no costumes, there were no props, and these talented actors, singers, musicians were just raw, and they shared themselves, and the talent that we see, that we think, they need all the lights, they need the big theatre, they need everything. They just shared themselves for the world, but for Stephen Sondheim at 90 years old. And I just couldn't get over how brave it was of them. There's no auto-tune to correct the wrong notes. It was because it was live, they couldn't fix the wrong words. And one in particular that just reminds me, there was Meryl Streep, two other famous singers, and they sang a trio, unrehearsed, totally unrehearsed, and they sang the trio together. Just magic, and I think that was pretty special and inspirational for me, that these stars would actually share their raw talent with the world.
Awesome. We're coming to the very end of this, and thank you all for your time being here tonight. We know that there is an ongoing need to support our artists and our arts community and our community organisations who are in a precarious state, and we acknowledge the need for more sustainable funding and for a kind of broader understanding of the value of arts from all facets of life, whether it's councils, whether it's funders, whether it's audience members, whether it's people consuming things online and knowing where to support artists and how to keep our stories being told, and knowing that the people who are telling our local stories, that's a key part to us recognizing who we are and where we belong, and the need for having those arts champions, those people like yourselves who are not afraid to share your thoughts on the value of the arts and why it should be supported. And we need those champions in local government, and we need those champions in national government, and we need them in our ministries, and we need them in our arts organisations. And I want to acknowledge all 5 of you for the roles that you play within that and what you do for our community through your enthusiasm for the arts, through your creativity, through your volunteering, through your willingness, through your passion. And I think that it's really important to acknowledge that and to acknowledge that in all of you tonight. So I want to do that, and then I want to give you all an opportunity to leave us with one final thought, one call to arms, one thing that you want people to ponder as they go about their Tuesday evening and into the rest of the week. What do people want to be thinking about in terms of anything that we've talked about today, or anything that we may not have talked about? And just because it seems like a fun way to do it, we'll go in the order in which we spoke. So I'm going to start with Regan.
Okay. So I think it was Picasso who would paint a new painting every day. And so throughout his lifetime, Nancy, you're blinking. I got the wrong artist. No, it was an amazing artist. Anyway, he said paint a new painting every day, which meant that throughout the career, he created so many different artworks and developed so amazingly. So my challenge is to try something new every day, whether it's creating, whether it's experiencing, whether it's reaching out to somebody that you haven't spoken to before or for a while. And your life will be more enriched.
Very good.
Awesome. Thank you. Nancy.
Me? Oh, okay. I think I want to say to people, consume the arts because it is so good for you. And as what Regan have said, if it's something that you've never tried before, give it a go. If you've never been to a musical, go to a musical. If you haven't been to a Shakespearean play, go to a Shakespearean play. This is the time to experience it. We've seen how life can be snatched away from us, so let's not waste it. Let's go and experience something totally new.
Awesome. Cian.
I thought of something. I watched Kura Forrester's stand-up show, Kura Woulda Shoulda. Great. If it's still on YouTube, have a laugh. If you're a parent, it's great. Put some earphones in though. It's just great. So I watched that. I just thought, and I also found another young artist on Instagram, Villa Junior Lemanu. He did a 3-part series. He's a dancer. I think he's based in Auckland. I didn't stalk. Someone shared his work, and he did a 3-part series of movement and film as a collaboration, and it was just something, that they did together and threw it together, and it was amazing. It came up on my feed and it was like, whoa, what? So there's my eloquent answer. Forget Paw Patrol. But I think my leaving message is, if we're ever questioning the value of arts, or what your relationship with arts is, close the book on your bedside table, turn the TV off, turn the music down on the radio, have silence in your car, look down and straight at the grey gravel road when you're driving, and don't look around, and don't think of, dressing anything a bit styly, or playing around with your outfit for the day, or same with your hair or your makeup, and then come back to me and tell me if you think art is valuable or not. Because it's all around us, and so we're always consuming it, and we're always actually expressing ourselves artistically, whether you think you are or not. We are, and so that's what I would say, is that you are always surrounded by art, and if you have if you are fortunate enough to have the ability to consume and to pass on contributions, financially support, or show up for someone who is giving their art and sharing it, then please do, because there's a lot that the higher powers can do. But I know for my work, if I can see that you have managed to get a babysitter for the night, and you have rocked up, and you're wearing your best outfit for the night, and you are there, and you have a glass of wine, and I can see baby spew on your shoulder, so I know that pain, then that is more than anything. So think of yourself in terms of serving the arts, or feeding from the arts, different ways that you can do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Michael.
Woo! It's too much. Somebody's gonna cry.
Talked about Paw Patrol, mate.
Yeah, somebody's gonna cry. Epic. I'm trying to think. I mean, so much has been said already, so I just wanted to kind of draw in the focus of my comment a little bit, I suppose. And my thinking is, if you're going through something, because I've been going through this whole process of going through things instead of avoiding them, go through it with something artistic, go through it with something creative, because it will carry you across that threshold a little bit more gently. I've learned to review my thoughts a little bit more gently, and art gives you that reprieve from your thoughts, sure, but it also allows you to go back into your thoughts to re-explore those thoughts from a far more gentle perspective. And if you're going through something, pick up a pen, weave some flax, whatever it is, just bring a little bit of art into your life, and it will carry you through whatever that is a little bit more gently.
Even walk with style to the letterbox.
Yeah, nice. We'll make it TikTok. Yeah.
Awesome. And David.
I suppose mine really is a New Zealand-wide or worldwide plea that everybody please stay safe and be wise, so that we can get out there and experience art and culture again as we used to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's been online viewing and commenting and liking. And it's great to be able to connect with an audience, even if we aren't really connecting with you in a way that we are traditionally familiar with. But it is great to have that connection, and to share this discussion, and to hear from these marvelous panelists. It's a real joy, and it's a real privilege for me to be able to be here at this time together with these people. And I will say, before we go, acknowledging that sometimes it's hard for all people to be able to access arts experiences, because maybe you can't afford the ticket, or you can't go there. But if you want to still be involved, the scope for volunteering in the arts is so massive. The arts is powered by passionate volunteers who give of their time in all manner of ways, and whether that's with the Burn Street Art Festival or Hamilton Operatic shows, or installing a gallery exhibition, or dropping off flyers, or putting up posters, or anything that you can do, it's rewarding because you get to be part of that community as well. And so, in as much as it benefits the arts, it also benefits us. It's a great community to be a part of, and it's a privilege to be a part of a group of artists every day. So with that, I say thank you to all our panelists. Thank you to everyone in attendance. Please have an excellent Tuesday evening and a great rest of your week. If you're interested, I'm going to be back here online tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, joined by my colleague Paul Bradley, talking about thinking strategically about your arts practice and how we can kind of plan a future vision moving forward. So we'll be here at 9 o'clock in the morning. Have a great sleep. Look after yourself. Go and watch or listen to something. Be well, and have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much.